Substack lives, because Substack has kind of improved their live capabilities and get more free subscribers, then we can bring them on. But I don't know. I think everyone is sort of used to and likes the idea of listening, at the time, and then they can download it and listen to it while they're not working.
Well, we're live. We're live on my X and Rumble and Odysee and Kick and that's it.
Wow. I'm a big fan of Kick, the video game streaming platform. I never thought I would appear there. Just kidding. All right. So let me read some more of these headlines just so we all are on the same page. Israeli military says strikes target Iran's nuclear program and other military targets. Israel strikes on Iran early Friday targeted the country's nuclear program and its long-range missile capabilities, an Israeli military official said. The strikes were a preemptive, precise, combined offensive that included dozens of targets across different areas of Iran, the military official said. This is the other thing that I wanted to mention, is that the last Israeli military official said that there's a small military and diplomatic window that they have to get into. And he might be very and diplomatic window that they have to be very accurate there, because there have been talks between Trump and Trump's people, basically a new Iran deal. Now, I can remember 2017 and Trump saying, it was the worst deal imaginable, the worst deal in history. I'm going to tear it up. And he did. Maybe primarily because it was Obama, and I think he did want to cancel the Obama presidency. But I think there were some other motives at play there, and they tore up that deal, and then now they're desperately trying to get one. The difference is, you could say, why don't they just go back to the old deal? Iran had agreed to that, and it's a different regime, not regime, but a different administration and et cetera. But why don't they just go back to the old one? What I have been hearing, and I think Trump has even confirmed this, is that now any sort of uranium enrichment is off the table. So there won't even be a civilian nuclear program. That's not going to be part of the deal. And so I think that's just sort of a no-go, where okay, you might as well come in here with bayonets and conquer my country, because we clearly don't have any sovereignty. You are declaring what I am able to do on behalf of the population and our energy needs. And that's absurd. They're not going to agree to that, particularly when they suffer under so many U.S. sanctions and diplomatic isolation, et cetera. And so I don't know. You could say that demand was a kind of poison pill, that they don't actually want a deal. That's what I was talking. That they don't actually want a deal. That's what I was talking about during the first people were as well. It wasn't so much that the Iran nuclear deal gave too much away, the Obama era one. It was that they don't want that at all. They don't want anything like that. They don't want a deal. They want escalation. They want some sort of excuse to attack Iran, as Netanyahu has been calling for 20 years. So anyway, just some thoughts. What are your immediate thoughts on the matter?
Absolutely. The no enrichment was the Zionist deal breaker, so there could be no negotiations. I believe it was the Adelsons that got Trump elected or helped Trump get elected in 2016 that wanted him to rip up the Iran deal. And I think we've been on here, we've talked a lot about, I remember you before the election saying you're not supporting Trump because he's more likely to get us in war with Iran, and here we are. And now I see all the Trump shills, all the Zionist shills busy right now trying to exonerate Trump and say he's not involved with this. And, it's Marco Rubio says it's unilateral, and cut the bullshit. And all it's going to take is Iran to retaliate, which they inevitably will. And then and then Trump's justified, and then you're going to give him a pass to bomb. We knew this was the plan, and Israel doesn't want to bomb Iran, and they know that if they bomb Iran, it's going to drag us in. Russia
Eventually.
Right.
Don't you think it's like the girlfriend at the bar that picks a fight between her boyfriend and her ex-boyfriend? Like, that's the way Israel acts. Like, it might very well be true that Trump did not order this attack or is caught a little bit off guard. Now, remember,
not stopping it. He's not
stopping it.
If he were to say no matter what, he's not going to defend
personnel.
them, they wouldn't do it.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's going to be another October 7th moment. And this time it's going to be some, suburb of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv neighborhood that gets destroyed by Iranian weapons.
Or New York.
And
some sleeper cell or dirty bomb or just terrorist
glad I got
attack.
out of there.
Right.
I was there last weekend, actually. I missed this. That is very possible. I mean, the other aspect of this is that Iran has, in a way, been getting its ass kicked in terms of its assets or strategic partners. Hezbollah gets attacked. There's no real response. The Houthis apparently won a kind of Pyrrhic victory in that the U.S. does not want to continue to engage with them. And maybe it's sort of good to be a mouse and not a lion in some situations where you become very difficult to kill and it becomes not worth it, in effect. But regardless, they've taken a lot of losses and they sort of escaped, I guess, direct confrontation. I don't know exactly what Hamas expected to happen with October 7th. I mean, you could say that their strategy was, in effect, the worse the better, accelerationism. That is, you're leaving us behind. You're signing all these deals with the Gulf Arab states. You're going to just sell out the Palestinians and you guys are just going to make a bunch of money. Fuck you. We're going to do this brazen attack and we're going to become relevant through that attack. And they have done that. That being said, Gaza's rubble, there's no doubt that Hamas leaders have been decimated. They've been embarrassed with the pager attack, etc. I mean, I agree that more will grow up like grass and to replace the ones who are dead. There's no doubt about that, but they still are dead. I mean, they have been really attacked. Now, going to the other, axis of resistance people, Bashar al-Assad was overthrown not too long ago, and that was the thing that if you listen to tanky Twitter could never happen. He's going to be like Castro in Cuba. He'll just every president will declare that he must go, but he stays. No, he actually is gone. He's hanging out in Moscow at this moment, and a former Al-Qaeda operative is in charge in Syria. So it's been, I mean, the Iran axis of resistance is decimated. It has had a huge gut punch. And so they're not really in a terribly strong position right now. So I guess I'm getting to this like diplomatic and military strategic window that Iran just jumped through right now. In terms of Trump's negotiations about nuclear deals, maybe they were in bad faith. That's actually quite possible. It's probably what I believe. But there is the outside chance that they would sign a nuclear deal that would make an attack or a preemptive attack moot or delay it at the very least. Also, Iran is just not in the position that they were 2 years ago or even a year ago. They don't have the asset like allies that they did previously. So this is the time to strike.
They have Russia. Russia and China and Iran have a defense treaty, and they've been doing war games together.
Interesting. Do you think that that's how it's going to break down?
I mean, that's the way it escalates. Unless
Yeah.
Israel just strikes Iran and they don't strike back, which I imagine they will. Otherwise, they're just going to be completely obliterated. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. And
They have to respond.
they have to, right? They already are. In fact, I saw that they launched. Israel could be getting hit pretty soon. At the very least, we're gonna shoot them down. But most likely, that's now Trump's gonna step in and say, well, we can't let them bomb Tel Aviv, so he's gonna start bombing them too. And then Russia has the pact with Iran. They're gonna step in, and Israel knew this was all gonna happen. And rabbis for years, if not hundreds of years, have wanted America and the West to get in a war with Iran and Russia so that we all destroy each other. This is their apocalyptic script. And all these Lindsey Graham and all these Zionists and Hegseth and Tom Cotton and all these Christian Zionists and all these rabbis around Netanyahu and Likud, this is what they want. It's not to defeat the threat of Iran. It's to drag us into World War III.
Yeah. Well, what is World War III going to look like? Because, I've talked a lot about this on the show. I think there are two options. The option that you just laid out was East and West, with Israel on the side of the West and NATO. And that makes a lot of sense.
In the beginning. They'll probably betray us at some point, openly betray us and join Russia and China for all we know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But the interesting thing about Trump is that there have always been impulses towards a new type of axis directed against Iran. Iran is never going to be on the side of the U.S. They're just at opposite poles, or the side of Israel. But I'll go back to it again, and I've mentioned this numerous times, but we have more subscribers. Maybe they're not bored of my broken record rant on the Seychelles Islands yacht visit between Blackwater founder Eric Prince, I'm forgetting the man's name. He's actually a sovereign hedge fund in effect, wealth manager from Russia. Someone can remind me of his name. Yeah, Kirill Dmitriev. Thank you. And Prince acted as the emissary from Trump. There's an emissary from Russia. The plan at that point was a Trump-U.S., Russia and Israel alliance against Iran. So Russia, we've treated you badly for so long. Why don't we drop the sanctions? Why don't we make you a partner, let you back onto the world stage? But you need to allow an attack on Iran, which is imminent. So we're going to break up this sort of BRICS or second world alliance between Iran and Russia. Russia's going to work with the U.S. in an attack on Iran. And that was attempted very early on in the first Trump administration. That document was, or proof that meeting occurred, was actually in the Washington Post. And it's maybe to some degree scuttled the whole thing just by making it open. And there are many people, neoconservatives, at least the mainstream ones, don't think in this way. David Frum does not think in this way. Republican neocons do not like this idea of linking up with Russia against even if it's against Iran on behalf of Israel. So there is that sort of option. And we've seen these inklings of something like that occurring. J.D. Vance's sabotage of the meeting with Zelensky, all of this peace talk. There was actually a statement released today on Russia Day by Marco Rubio in the State Department about how we love Russia and want peace. There was a recent discussion with, I believe it was with Hegseth and Mitch McConnell in Congress, where Mitch McConnell said, who is the aggressor in the Ukraine-Russia war? Hegseth said Russia, and then he said, which side do you want to win? And Hegseth said, well, Trump wants peace. So that seems to be an indication of we are perfectly willing to work with Russia. Russia is going to benefit 1,000,000% from any sort of Mideast campaign. We are going to put all materiel, all focus, all diplomatic efforts on the Middle East. The other thing is whenever there's war in the Middle East, you know what goes up? Gas prices, oil. What funds the Russian war machine? What funds the entire Kremlin, basically, the entire country? What funds it? Oil prices. Getting oil prices to $100 a barrel, $120 a barrel, maybe that's too much. That is obviously going to help Putin engaged in a just drawn out campaign in Ukraine. He could basically go on for 10 years with billions coming across the barrel every day. So I don't know. I think it would be natural for an East-West split to occur where Israel is on the side of the West. But I think and Russia's on the other side. Russia's with Iran. They're fighting against it. But I think there's been this sort of subterranean move to create something else there. Just a thought.
You're saying you're wondering if Russia is going to abandon defending Iran?
Yes. Yes.
And what would incentivize them to do that?
We allow for peace in Ukraine, and we basically take all focus off Ukraine. We give up Ukrainian territory, if not the entire country.
Give them what they wanted for Ukraine. Right?
Give them what they want, and they basically just abandon Iran and allow it to happen. I'm not saying that they're going to be, fighting alongside Israelis or something like that, but I think that is a real possibility.
I mean, they just let Assad fall.
They did.
Without even any fighting back. I wonder what Russia's saying right now about all this. Is Putin threatening, like, if America attacks Iran, we're going to get engaged? I wonder if that's what they're going to say.
Let me see, because they certainly have enough time to respond here. Let me just see the Russian Federation.
Netanyahu says, did you see he did a statement? This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove the threat.
Yeah, I mean, they're never going to stop this. I mean, this is like 2.5 years drawn out war in Gaza. I mean, they're in it for the long term.
Didn't the Houthis just attack Tel Aviv too, or like a naval base or something?
The Houthis are attacking Iran?
No, the Houthis attacked Israel a few days ago.
Oh, Israel. Okay. Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's so great. I'm watching the InfoWars guys. I'm watching all the Trump cheerleaders. They're all trying to exonerate Trump. Like, Trump's not involved. This isn't Trump. Like, who's really falling for this? We told you Trump was going to get us embroiled in a war with Iran, and here we are.
Yeah. Some say I'm the king of Israel. I mean, he openly declares that he is going to be a protector of Israel, that he loves Netanyahu, that he doesn't like the slaughter. It's a little bad optics on the old timeline. But other than that, he is 100% backing Israel. He has declared that to you so many times. And I don't know, this idea that, he's the first president in a generation not to start a new war. I mean, first off, he came very close. But secondly, all of those seem to be contingent upon historical circumstances or something. I mean, do you think Biden, I mean, that almost only works if you think Biden started the war in Ukraine or something, which they probably do. So no, he's made himself very clear. The other thing, in terms of popularity falling, there's nothing like a world war to increase your approval rating numbers. I mean, he's just simply incentivized to do this.
Trump campaigned as the only person that could save us from World War III. He promised he was going to end the war with Russia and Ukraine on day one with one phone call. That never happened. Now he's saying Putin's gone insane and he's gone crazy and he wants all of Ukraine and he's killing people and he doesn't want peace and won't negotiate. And then now we got the Iran war too. And we knew this was going to happen.
I don't know. I think I was still in the mindset that it would never happen. I remember back in 2007, it was like late 2007, when I was with Taki Theodorakopoulos, because I was about to edit Taki's magazine. And he asked me, do you think that there's going to be a war in Iran? And I was like, I do, because this is just the logical next step. It's literally been planned out in white papers. This is it. This is where they go next.
Yeah.
Now, that was in 2000.
And scriptures, even before
And
the
in
white
scriptures.
papers.
Yes, the other white papers, yes.
Go ahead. I'll say it later. I don't want to.
Yeah, but I was wrong, and I sort of tried to learn something from that, which is that these powers do respond to circumstances. They respond to popular opinion. They respond to the limits of power. They respond to failure. I mean, failure. Nothing succeeds like success. Nothing fails like failure. If you're failing at one place, you're going to fail at others. And when the Iraq War turned and the patriotarded flag pin wearing Republicans stopped spewing their bullshit constantly, there just wasn't any legitimacy for an Iran war. So I thought it actually wasn't going to happen, but here we are.
The nothing ever happened bros have pie
Crying,
on their
right?
face
Yeah.
today. And yes. My friend Amalek in the chat here says that if Trump doesn't do exactly what he wants, if he doesn't defend them hard enough, if he doesn't strike back when they attack Tel Aviv, they're going to say Trump betrayed them too. That'll be the narrative, that he didn't defend them. He left them out all by themselves. He abandoned them on their own. So if he doesn't give them everything they want, that's going to be the narrative. And I'm hearing Netanyahu thank Trump in his latest statement, and Michael Tracy just shared an old clip of Trump saying that he would back Israel in an attack against Iran from, I think it was before the election. So don't act like you're blindsided by this, Trump cheerleaders.
No, absolutely not. Let's go to some questions. We can keep the conversation going. I actually think that the more questions, the better here. I mean, I kind of talked for most of the time last time, but just because this is just breaking, I think I've sort of thrown out any plans, and we're just going to respond to what's happening right now. But John Deere, you can go first.
I don't think I'm very original in saying this, but even beyond Israel, specifically Bibi, he's basically the Churchill of Israel. He's only popular during wartime, and thus he's going to need to keep this up as long as humanly possible to keep him and the Likud coalition in power in Israel.
Yes, he's also facing some potential jail time for corruption and so on. Before October 7th, he was facing massive protest. I mean, sustained massive protest over the Supreme Court situation, where he wanted to limit the power of the Supreme Court. A lot of the non-Likud kind of liberal Zionist types didn't quite like this. That's all been forgotten. Yes, he's a wartime president, and he doesn't want to go the way of Churchill, where he gets knocked off in 1946 or 1945, even as the war, as the Second World War ended. Let's just watch this. So this is Trump openly campaigned on allowing Israel to bomb Iran, so no one can say they've been blindsided or betrayed. Promises made, promises kept. Yeah, this is when I actually like Michael Tracy.
They asked him, what do you think about Iran? Would you hit Iran? And he goes, as long as they don't hit the nuclear stuff. That's the thing you want to hit, right? I said, I think he's got that one wrong. Isn't that the one you're supposed to hit? I mean, it's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. You know, I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, we have to be totally prepared. We have to be absolutely prepared. But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later. And that's what, if they're going to do it. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. But we'll find out whatever their plans are. But great question. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Trump has been obsessed with nuclear weapons for, I mean, I guess we all have to some degree, but Trump has been obsessed with nuclear weapons for his entire career. Even that whole idea of using a nuke on a tornado or a hurricane or whatever the hell he said in 2018, that didn't come from nowhere. And even when the Republican Party was courting him in 92 at the convention, he actually attended the George Herbert Walker Bush convention and had sex with Marla Maples while speeches, I mean, not on stage, of course, but while speeches were going on, they were notably absent, and they came back, and all this kind of stuff. He wanted, this was in Maggie Haberman's book, The Confidence Man. He wanted to be declared a kind of strategic expert on nuclear weapons. So he is fascinated by this. This is sort of the ultimate expression of his pathological narcissism, the idea of annihilating an enemy or something like this. So yeah, this is how he thinks. He wants to, I mean, I don't think he rebuilt the military, but he wants to imagine himself as like increasing our nuclear power and imagine himself as preventing Iran from ever, basically carrying the Excalibur, the ability to utterly destroy your enemy with a single stroke.
I'm seeing Israeli outlets are claiming that Israel has eliminated the entire Iranian security apparatus in the strikes tonight. And I shared in the comments and on your Twitter DMs, CNN reporting something similar. If you want to play that too, I'd like to see
Holy
it.
shit.
Dude, the Jews just keep winning, man. The pagers, the assassination of the Hamas leaders, shooting down every missile and drone that Iran sends.
And the Arabs, and I guess Persians in this case, just keep losing. I mean, it's just unbelievable the degree to which they get their asses kicked
and yet
every
they still think
fucking
Allah
time.
is on their side and he's the all-powerful, and now they're just like, even when they lose, they think they're winning because they're martyrs for the cause or something.
No.
First, Caitlin, something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight. I hear that again from a senior Israeli official who says that several senior top Iranian military commanders, including the head of the general staff of the Iranian military and senior nuclear scientists, have all been targeted in those strikes. And according to IDF assessments, there's a high chance that they've been eliminated.
I mean, that is really striking intelligence, if that is accurate.
First, Caitlin,
yeah, I mean, holy
I just
shit.
heard from
That might very well be bombast, but I mean, wow. This is the other thing that came out yesterday, which is that Iran seemed to leak this material, but is that Iran, they apparently hacked Israel. I don't even know what to make of this, but this was released last night. They apparently hacked Israel, and they learned that leaders of the IAEA, the agency on, what is the IAEA? The agency on its nuclear stuff. It's the International kind of Nuclear Inspectors Administration, whatever it is. That they were basically telling Israel, International Atomic Energy Agency, thank you. Kyle M is saving my asshole. That's what it was. I was thinking there was an N in there, but it's Atomic Energy Agency. These are the inspectors. They're, highly relevant with the Iraq War, et cetera. And that they were giving the names and locations of Iranian scientists to Israel. So that, and this was coming from the top, that they were leaking this information. So, I mean, I don't it might be bombast what was just said, but I don't fully doubt that they had precise locations of all of these key people and that they eliminated them.
They probably, you know how the guy just got sentenced to 37, what was it? The guy that released the plans that Israel had to strike. It's like, did they just follow through with all those plans or something? Because it looks like they're targeting nuclear facilities and apartment buildings where I guess scientists or something or leadership is there. So it's like they still are completely successful anyway, even though all of their plans got leaked a few months ago.
Yeah. I mean, you can't stop them. You can get the other team's playbook, but if they're bigger and faster than you, it doesn't matter.
Does Iran have no defense systems? They haven't shot any of these things down. No defense at all. They're just sitting ducks ready to take it. Everybody knew this attack was imminent.
Yeah, remember all of those dumb responses that Iran had where they send drones and the drones are shot out of the sky? I mean, this is, I don't know. I mean, there's a competency crisis in America. I think there's a massive competency crisis in the Middle East. There's a massive competency crisis among the so-called axis of resistance. They're just idiots. I mean, it's just also, I mean, let's be honest. The Soviets got a nuclear weapon within 10 years of Hiroshima. It might have been 5 years through espionage, through their own scientific development. I mean, it's 2025 and you don't actually have nuclear weapons. That's on you.
And according to the Israelis, they've been right on the verge of having them for 30 years.
Yes, exactly.
But they did, remember a couple years ago, Israel assassinated one of their top scientists, like with the remote control car that was booby-trapped with like a machine gun or something. So like that's another huge W that they got. It's like it's not even a fair fight. They're just taking so many L's. Maybe Israel will just destroy him and get a regime change and then, you know, not have the threat anymore. And it won't lead to World War III. Given how one-sided it's all been, who's to say that Iran's going to retaliate and even strike anything?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't, just from the perspective of world peace or something, I don't even think that's the worst outcome, to be honest. I don't know what to say. I saw some tweet before we came on from, update. It had 500,000 followers, so I would assume it's major. You never know these days on X, but it was the Iranian military, and they were tweeting out, remember, we never initiated this.
Yeah, as if like, prepare, don't blame them.
Maybe you should have.
Yeah, don't blame them when they flatten Israel. Like, that's not going to happen. They probably know that too. They know that even that if Israel doesn't shoot down, I mean, last time they tried, didn't they send like hundreds of missiles and drones and not one casualty? Like what makes them think it's going to be any different this time?
Yes, exactly. And what I remember hearing copes by people where it's like, oh, they learned so much from that. Like it was like a learning operation to see and I was like, oh.
Yeah, more like learn that they don't stand a chance.
God. Raphael, do you want to jump in?
Hello?
Yeah.
I was just gonna point out there's the narratives are brewing in the primordial chaos. Charlie Kirk posted a poll. Do you think the US should get involved? As if this isn't specifically happening now because of the opportunity created by
the exactly.
And also as if the entire thing isn't fundamentally U.S. control. So I thought that it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Let's. I might want to even watch a little bit of what's going on among the young millennial Trump shills. So here it is. Should the U.S. get involved in Israel's war against Iran? That was precisely articulated. I'm just going to vote yes, just to kind of make conservatives look bad. Let's see what's going on
here. We've got
here.
This immediate rapid response from X. And you remember that even if you think
no light in his eyes
that the war is a good idea going into it, it sort of gives you this overarching look where you have the ability to think, secondary effects, tertiary effects, those could potentially be far worse and far wider reaching than anything that came before. And how do we know about this? Well, we have the history of the Iraq War and the history of the global war on terror, the recent history, even with the fall of Kabul, that we can point to and say, yeah, this went really, really wrong, even though we thought these were great ideas going into it. And just for Tyler and Blake, I didn't know if you guys had any reflections, or if it just for me, I keep feeling like it's very similar to that.
Yeah, well, my thought is, if I think about how it feels different from then, I mean, certainly the right is totally different. The right was in a very rah mood, and we should acknowledge, not everyone was. There were people on the right, Pat Buchanan was one of them. There were others who said, this war would be a mistake. This is not what conservatism is about. This is not what putting America first is about.
There's no 9/11 this time to rally everybody.
A huge blunder. People warned about that. We should remember that. And we our blood was up over 9/11, and I think it's taken a long time for us to come around to this, but I think there's now a pretty widespread acknowledgement that because of 9/11, because of the national tragedy,
I just want to let him land this point, and then
we made a big mistake. We got ourselves involved in conflict.
Yeah, no shit.
Is that Tim Pool? Just kidding.
He's
Tim Pool removed his beanie finally for World War III coverage.
Right. He's not nearly as charismatic as Tim Pool is. Yeah. I can't believe you said that. It's kind of funny. Just some thoughts on this. So that was Jack Posobiec and two guys I've never heard of who are Discount Ben Tim Pools. They're 30% off this week for live streaming. But it is interesting. And, I can remember those days. That is 9/11 is shortly after. I was in New York for 9/11, believe it or not. I didn't watch the planes hit. I watched the towers in a flame and smoking and then come down from Brooklyn.
You weren't dancing, were you?
Right. No, I was
singing Depeche Mode as they went down.
Pain, will you return it? I'll say it again. Pain. No, I was actually in flight school at the time. No, just kidding. I was there, and then I definitely experienced all of the aftermath. And that, remember, 25 years ago, boomers weren't 75 to 85 or even 95 or dead. Boomers were a little bit younger. Boomers weren't the boomers that we know now. Yeah. And
they only had Fox News.
Yes, that is very true as well. There wasn't the social media. There wasn't any sort of anti-war. On the right, there wasn't any sort of anti-war pressure. Like they're now talking about Pat Buchanan. When I worked for the American Conservative or was doing this stuff in the 2000s, that we were totally marginal. We didn't get the sort of exposure that you and I get now on Twitter. I mean, it was totally marginal. The right was 98, if not 100% behind Bush in the war. So that should be remembered, that they have that in them to do that again. But what I was saying is that it was this weird time of Bush saying, let's all come together and go back to theme parks and go to the shopping mall. We can't allow the terrorists to win, but also go sign up. Like, your boys, we're going in there and we're bringing freedom to those sons of bitches. Like, there was a real, genuine war fever in the country, and it was a fever of boots on the ground. There was no talk of this being like one of these laptop bombardier things in Eastern Europe under Clinton. It was, we're going in now, and the question is when. Now, there was left-wing opposition. unquestionably. But that's where the country was to a very large extent. And you can even see this in culture and country music at the time about sticking boots in Arabs' asses and lynching Muslims and so on. This is literally lyrics from the country music at the time.
Dixie Chicks were like... Dixie Chicks were like ran out of... Or for Bush.
Yeah, they offered like mild criticism of the war, and people were smashing their albums. So that's where the country was, and we're just in a different place right now. I mean, and I've said this before in the sense of like, yes, in some ways it's better because I was totally anti-war. I was interested in the left, but always more interested in the right, and hated the neocons, hated Bush. I voted for John Kerry for what that's worth in 2004. I actually voted for Bush in 2000, so maybe I'm responsible to some degree. But reading antiwar.com all the time, Pat Buchanan, blah, blah, blah. That was marginal. But so things have gotten better in a way, but they've gotten better to some degree because the whole country has like disintegrated and fragmented and become gay. And what I mean by that is that in 2001 through 2006, which was sort of the height of war fury, even by 2007, things were declining. But it was a whiter country. It was a younger, whiter country. The boomers were not in their dotage. The boomers were in older middle age, ready to rock. We hadn't had the Iraq War experience, which was not quite as bad as Vietnam, but was humiliating. And so it's like, yeah, I think it's less likely that we're going to do that again, but that's in some degree shows how like weak and dumb we've become. Like we don't even have it in us to be war hungry retards. And so this like patting ourselves on the back for being anti-war, it's like, well, we're sort of a bunch of girly men, don't you think? Do you understand my point? Like we're not,
and they don't need, Israel doesn't need boots on the ground either. Like people are saying like, I'm not going to die for Israel, or I'm not going to go send our blood. Like that's not going to happen. They're just going to, it's going to be advanced weapons.
Exactly. That's why I think it's going to be different this time. We don't have 9/11. Maybe somewhat surprisingly, there hasn't been a false flag terror attack in the United States, but yet. But also, we're just a different country. I mean, yes, recruitment for the Army and the rest of the armed forces are up, and that probably has something to do with the Trump effect or the Top Gun Maverick effect. Even
we're not woke anymore. They were just having hearings in Congress today. They were like berating Hegseth for being anti-trans or whatever in the military. So. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but it's different. But at the same time, America's also sort of used up. Like at no point were we really seriously going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine either. Whereas in the 1950s, 10 years after the end of the Second World War, a new generation or younger members of the same generation strapped up and went to Korea on some foolish errand. And then by the mid 60s, they did it again in Vietnam. I think things have fundamentally changed where it is going to be very difficult to get the American public to sign on to something like that. And in many ways, that is a sign of our own decline and atrophy. And I might even agree with it, but it's also a sign of the lessening white population of the country, to be honest. This is something I remember. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sort of waxing nostalgic here, going back to the past. This is something that Scott McConnell, who I worked for when I worked at the American Conservative, which was the only anti-war newspaper or magazine on the right. I guess there was Chronicles too, two small fledgling, no one reads them magazines were opposed to the war during the Bush era. But anyway, Scott McConnell I think God is jaded as I have become. And he wrote this article about immigration. And he basically said, there is a silver lining to the browning of America. And that is that the neocons rely on white Christians to support campaigns like the Iraq War. And the Hispanics are just going to be apathetic, out to lunch, totally unmoved by calls for, this is World War III, or I guess in Norman Podhoretz, World War IV, in fact, against the new Stalinist terrorism that we see arising in the Middle East. Those kind of calls just have no appeal to a multiracial brown America. And I think that is actually true. Our decline has led us to this state where we're not going to go to war, but we're also weak and gay.
Less unity, less patriotism. Even if it's for a war we don't want to be in, that's still, I think, undeniable that less people are going to want to do this. What effect do you think this is going to have on the nationwide communist revolution protests that are planned for the upcoming days?
It's handing them a gift.
Mobilize them even more, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Because, now it's real. Now it's not just about rounding up dishwashers or Home Depot day laborers. Now it's real. It's like, let's save the world. We've got to save the world now. We're not going to allow nuclear war. We're not going to allow the genocide of the Iranian people by Israel. I mean, they have been empowered by this, no question.
Yeah, and Iran is aligned with communist Russia and China, and these protests are full of kafiyas and Free Palestine people and Marxists. So this is going to activate and mobilize them and fire them up a whole lot more, probably.
No doubt.
And get people that wouldn't have joined the protest to get up and go out and do it now, even more so.
Yeah, and it connects, illogically you could say, but it associates anti-immigration or closed borders with Zionist wars. Which is the problem. It was actually the problem that Scott McConnell was getting at, even though he didn't put it in those words. So now, if you are closed borders, anti-immigration, that also means that you're a fanatical Zionist that wants to nuke Iran. Even though that those things are totally disconnected, have no logical connection, you sort of have to support them because we're in a duopoly where we have these, as Paul Gottfried called them, these like idea clusters, that emerge. So it's like, I am anti-abortion and I'm Christian, but I'm also pro-capitalism and I'm also pro-Iraq war. And I'm also against regulation of food because that's what it means to be a Republican. That's the idea cluster that we've kind of forced into this two-party duopoly. Yeah. And particularly under polarization, because again, before you and I were born, it was actually very different. The parties were basically the same. Like they didn't disagree, in fact, on much. And the Democrats were just sort of more hegemonic, but there was tremendous crossover. There was no vaccine discussion. Both parties were pro-vaccine. There was no a Cold War discussion. Both parties were effectively Cold Warriors. Now, there were some differences that are important, but everyone was on the same page because everyone was Protestant and white.
Immigration too, less debate on immigration for sure.
Yeah, certainly Republicans supported the 65 Immigration Act as well. Although it was contentious, and there was contentious matters with civil rights, although it was reversed, the parties were reversed at the time, but whatever, we were one nation. We're no longer one nation.
I'm seeing Israeli military has killed Iran's military chief of staff.
Holy shit.
That's the top military official, apparently. I wonder if they're targeting like the very top guys also, or like the what does the leader of Iran live in? The supreme leader. Like, are they not bombing his building? Why you think that would be the first to get it?
They're claiming they took out the entire top, like everybody. Like, it's fucking nuts.
Iran deserves to lose if they're this fucking idiotic. I mean, literally, we knew that this was going to happen. Like, how are you not? Oh my God.
Completely unprepared.
It's actually turned me into a Zionist at this point. I want Israel to win at this point. Now they're just so incompetent, the Iranians.
I'm not exactly a fan of like Muslim extremists running any countries either. I'm not just anti-Judaism and Christianity. Like, I don't want religious fanatics running any countries.
I cannot believe that. So this is also, there's no way that this ends quickly. I mean, you do something that bold. This can't be even couched as like a strategic strike to knock out some nuclear facilities, but we're going to be okay. Even Trump was making diplomatic overtures. He was like, no nukes, but if you don't do nukes, then we'll work together and trade. We want you to be great. All that kind of stuff. That's out the window. You killed the fucking military staff of a country. I mean, you are in total war with that country.
But for PR purposes, think about how the PR narrative is going to go down. Well, Trump tried to negotiate, but they didn't want to make a deal. They gave him the offer.
Right.
That's like the Jewish law too. Is you have to offer peace and negotiation first before having war. And if they just take out a bunch of the leaders and the military stuff, and it's not like indiscriminate carpet bombing and a bunch of videos of dead kids, like it's going to be a W. Honestly,
yeah,
W for Israel.
Well, Adam, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Isn't that right?
It's kind of true, though. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a tanky, because I would be forced to defend these regimes as competent and great and wonderful and progressive and things like that. And I'm glad I don't have to do that. They can't even defend the state itself. I mean, that's just insane.
Like Scott Ritter and Jackson Hinkle, they're like, oh, Hezbollah, Israel doesn't want to mess with Hezbollah. They got all their people blown up with pagers from Israel. And then they were saying the same thing about Hamas at first. Oh, they'll never do boots on the ground. Like, they got booby traps. They'll lose. That was bullshit. And then now Hezbollah, same thing. And then Iran, it's like it's not even a contest. They're paper tigers all along, apparently. Does Russia want to risk nuclear war to completely have to defend them?
Scott Ritter is the Jim Cramer of geopolitics. Whatever he says will happen, you can be assured the exact opposite is going to come true. He said, Russia is going to conquer Ukraine in a week. We're 3 years into the war. He said that, Assad's going to push back against the rebels and win. He's out of power now. Hezbollah is going to win in Lebanon. They're totally decimated. Hamas is going to push Israel back. Gaza's rubble.
We've just reached the point. I mean, maybe we're jumping the gun here, but I'm trying to look at some of these things that people are posting, but every indication is that this is a humiliating defeat. Let's just watch a little Scott Ritter, because someone brought him up.
Justin, Iranian outlets claim that Iran will declare war on Israel and retaliate soon. Oh, wait, after everything's... Why would they not be retaliating now? They're going to wait until a few more things get blown up?
Why not do a preemptive action? Because, I mean, surely their intel is better than mine. And I've been thinking that this is imminent. This is going to happen.
Yeah, it's like their leadership's like, don't worry, guys, we're monitoring the situation.
Exactly. Here's Scott.
Exactly how many? It looks like many people have been taken prisoner, but it also looks as if large quantities of the Syrian army were able to withdraw from Aleppo in decent order and fall back on prepared positions. Reserves have been mobilized relatively quickly. The 4th Armored Division and I think the Tiger Force have been brought up. And the Russian Air Force, I don't know what people thought was going to happen, but it has come to life, and it is blowing the living crap out of the out of the HTS, out of the al-Nusra people, and Idlib, along with the Syrian Air Force. Hezbollah is engaged, and Iran is engaged, sending its own forces and mobilizing Iraqi pro-Iranian militias to coming in. The situation is stable, I would say right now. I would say that the gambit has failed, that there's a lot of heavy fighting left ahead. But I think the loser in all of this is Turkey. I think
always say Turkey.
Heavy fighting, no need to panic. Bashar al-Assad certainly isn't panicking. And I think Turkey and the rebels are going to pay a very, very heavy price.
Wow.
How long before the Russians and the Arabs countries start accusing him of being an Israeli agent for giving them all this false sense of security and confidence and being wrong about every analysis, completely wrong?
I remember Chuck Johnson told me, Chuck's in some hot water right now, but I wish him the best. But Chuck Johnson told me that he was extremely pro-Israel and then he turned on them immediately. So his claim to fame was in 2003, claiming that Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but he actually was on the total other side of this issue. It's a very, he's a very weird character, and he always seems to be like working for someone. He's like working for the Russians, working for the Israelis, working for Syria, and they find this guy who's like extremely botched as a person. I mean, he's been to jail for being a child molester. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
CIA
I guess
too. Wasn't Johnson like CIA or FBI, like codename Genius also?
That's what Chuck was?
Yeah, that's what I heard. They said he was some kind of informant and his code name was Genius with the U.S. government as well. What kind of hot water is he in, by the way? I
don't really want to. He's in this legal
lawsuits?
It's a lawsuit hot water, but there's a threat of jail time due to contempt of court. So it's actually kind of bad. I don't know what to say about what's happening with him. The accusation is that he was shaking down people in Houston and claiming that if they invested in his companies, the U.S. government would support them because the U.S. government loves him, and this kind of thing. It was not a good situation. The accusation is pretty dire. He claims he's innocent and that this is going to like reveal all of the people who are against him or something. I don't
like he's
know
got
what
a
to
lot
say.
going on, and he was banned from Twitter, unfortunately, so we don't get to get the updates about it.
Yeah. I'm just going to leave it there. I genuinely wish him the best, but I sort of don't want to come down on either side. I don't know. I don't want to even learn about the lawsuit. I've got enough on my plate. Alan Watts, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for letting me on. So the U.S., we've been pulling troops out and non-key personnel from Iraq for the past 3 days.
Yeah.
Which, when you see that, you know something hot is about to happen in that area. And I think the amplification of all of these protests are nothing more than to obfuscate the American public, so that way Israel can have a free hand in doing what it's currently doing now. What do you think?
Pulling out, what is that? Restate what you're saying. I don't.
So the two things in combination, the pulling out of the troops from the Middle East, and I'm sorry if you hear concussions in the background, I'm right outside a military base. So
wow.
pulling out troops from the Middle East, that's just a clear indicator that we knew something was going on. And
but what is that obfuscating? I mean, that would be indicating.
He said you'll find out why they're being pulled out.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And I think that this amplification, I think of what's going on with the protests, these two things are interlinked. Either the protests are done to create a cloud so nobody focuses on what Israel's doing, which is, they've been saying they're going to do it for decades. And, or this whole Israeli thing, I don't think it's being amplified. I was just on RT a few minutes ago, and RT is just, they're state-run media, but they're publishing things about blood rituals on their front pages of rabbis in Israel, and that article just came out a few hours ago. So I don't know what RT's signaling with that, but I think there's a whole bunch of confusion in the air. I don't know if we're ever really going to get to the truth as to what's going on right now in Iran.
Yeah, when I look at Twitter right now, and I go to trending, not for you, it's how to train your dragon is number one. That's no doubt promoted.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I think it's just, they're just creating confusion for us.
Yeah, this is something that I thought about in terms of the coincidence of the immigration protest and this Iran thing. So, look, immigration's a serious issue, and I obviously believe that a country can and should defend its borders, blah, blah, blah. But Gavin Newsom is totally correct that federalizing the National Guards and sending in hundreds of Marines and talking big about chaos and et cetera was an escalation by Trump. I mean, I talked about this on yesterday, actually. There's just no doubt about it. These protests about the ICE raids at Home Depot and some other meatpacking place or something like that were smaller than like celebrations when the Lakers win the championship. I mean, they overreacted to a situation in a way. Now, what's going on there? Is Trump sort of feeling the heat? He's seeing the numbers fall down. He wants to get a big win. He show force. Is he nostalgic for 2020 and he wants to sort of rehearse his failures from that time? That's what I was stressing yesterday. Or surely they are allied with Israel, obviously. Surely they had an inkling that this was going to happen, and they kind of feel that things are on a war footing. We might need to start expelling pro-Palestinian protesters now so that they don't do what they did in 2024 again when Israel is attacking Iran. We might need to sort of get ahead of this. We might need to declare martial law in certain situations if there is mass protest. Not sure that will happen, but you get my point. Like, we need to get on a war footing immediately, get out ahead of this. And so, I mean, you could say it's a distraction, but and that might be the case, but I wonder if it's just sort of the U.S. getting on a war footing at this point. Like, this is where we are.
Did you see what Dugan tweeted? He says something about mass protest and war like go hand in hand together or something like that. He's got a hard on for what's happening with the protests over here and World War III.
So I wanted to I'll throw it and then I'll be done, guys. I lived in the Middle East for years. I did crap that I personally can't say I regret, but as wearing the colors, I can say was very regretful. I know the way these people think, and I think so do the people that are calling the shots here. And this whole thing with sending the Marines, sending the National Guard, doing this massive parade for the U.S. Army, which Trump can care less about the U.S. Army. All of this is done. What this signals to the Middle East is, they're distracted. This strike, it might not happen. The strike might not happen now because look at all the Marines. They have no concept. They actually believe what they see on the internet because they're sort of isolated in that part of the world, in particular Iran.
You're talking about the Iranians see this and think,
yes,
we can go now because they're
Yes.
Go and do what? What are the Iranians going to do?
No. The Iranians are thinking that the attack is not imminent because the Americans have their hands tied with all of this immigration and all these protests and with this massive parade, and all of that is being amplified. I mean, there are military parades, guys, every month. There are military parades in this country. You go to any major base, Hood, Benning, Bragg, they have massive parades all the time. They practice parades in Virginia. So the fact that this thing is being massively amplified, a guy like me that spent decades in there, you know, I'm like, why? Like, what's the point? And now, because of this action that just is literally happening live, I look back on it and I'm like, how could I have not have seen, you know, the steps? And like, we've done this before. We've done this, whether it was the bombing of Gaddafi's tents and the lead up to that, whether it was Benghazi. In retrospect, if you just see what was going on in the mainstream, back then it was TV or newspapers or magazines, you can see where this was leading up. You can see it. And we're watching this live, but there's no doubt that the US and Israel were in total collusion. There's no civil war between Netanyahu and Trump. That's just another kayfabe. And I'll leave you guys with that.
Yeah, I never bought that entirely. I mean, I think there probably were some tensions, mostly over his endorsement of Joe Biden's election. But Chris Shab, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of say, like, I mean, it seems like something's changed with Israel, right? Like, this does not seem like the same Israel from like 10 years ago. There's something there. I think it's possible. I think Israel at this point is a lot more powerful than people think they are. And their AI apparatus and intelligence apparatus is at a scary level, right? I mean, these people we're talking about, they took out the scientists and the leadership. Like this is completely skipping over everything. Right. And it seems like only the past couple year or two that they've been doing this. Right. And I think we're kind of stepping into a new phase with Israel where, like, these people are a lot more dangerous than everyone thinks. The way Iran's being handled, I don't think anyone in the Middle East is going to challenge Israel at any point. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like what's going on with that? It seems weird.
I have a hard time disagreeing with you, because taking out the military brass is something you do after you win the war. The fact that they did this immediately after it got started is just beyond remarkable. I agree. Palantir tech, some sort of intelligence tech that allowed them to know the more or less exact whereabouts of scientists and military generals is, yes, this is insane.
I see Iran military Twitter account shared a picture of one of these protesters with a mask and the Mexican flag, and it says, "Make Mexico Great Again." So there, Iran is trying to, you know, activate the protesters to be on their side. Not that they wouldn't already, because they're anti-Trump. So it's weird that we're going to have...
What the fuck are they doing?
Well, we're going to have protests all over the country that are on the side of Iran, and they got like Soviet flags, a lot of these people too, and they're all like, I played a clip of a Mexican dude interviewed the other day. He's like, yeah, we want America to be like the Soviet Union. So real socialism this time. So it would be like if we were at war with Russia and then we had capitalist riots all over Russia at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the equivalency.
My feeling is that in a way, the nothing ever happens people are correct. This is my gut feeling of where we are right now at 10:15 Eastern time, is that they are going to dismantle the Iranian regime. Iran will respond meekly and weakly, and that they aren't going to blow up New York. They aren't going to blow up Tel Aviv. They aren't going to destroy a battalion of Israelis. They're just going to get their fucking face caved in, and then they're going to go back talking about how innocent they are. And there's not going to be actually massive escalation and a World War III or anything like that, precisely because they're so weak. I mean, this is sort of, this is my impression right now.
I know. It doesn't seem like Israel's going to have to stage some false flag or something to drag us into the war. They don't need us. If they're already taking out the leadership and all the top scientists and in the first night, and they're not done, they're saying this operation is going to take weeks. Like, Iran says they're going to retaliate and declare war soon. I just don't see it. We saw their attempt last time, and they didn't do anything. And Russia sure as hell isn't going to help them bomb Israel.
No, Russia, I'm curious if Putin's going to even make a statement on this. My guess is that they're just going to let it be, or they'll blame America for allowing the crisis to take place, which is what they did with the Gaza situation. This is ultimately America's fault. They allowed the situation to unfold or something like that. That's what they're going to say. But they're not dying for Iran, and they love it. They love it. Total focus is off Russia.
I saw a report like Iran's been bragging about their defense systems, and I'm not seeing anything shot down. Have they shot down one Israeli missile? I'm not even seeing like them try to shoot them down and miss. The videos that I'm seeing.
It's gonna be regime death, and it's going to be very similar to the situation in Syria, where this unlikely and Western-backed candidate emerges as the leader of the opposition, and they go into a sort of half chaos, half quasi-parliamentary situation for the next 10 years. It's just awful.
The Jews are going to be so cocky and confident after this. The chutzpah is going to be off the charts after this.
Oh, yeah.
This destruction.
We can watch what Dave Portnoy is saying. SS?
Yeah, I was wondering, I don't have empirical evidence to back this up, but from various documentaries I've seen from tourists, and I think even Rick Steves' Europe, they depict the population of Iran being a large number of Persians who are not Islamic, but living in an Islamic regime. And my question is whether or not what this could be is a targeted regime change attempt from Israel for a population already ready for that kind of revolution to happen. And it would be less of a large-scale all-out war.
Very possible. I mean, what I've always heard from realists like Mearsheimer, et cetera, is that, yes, Tehran is a secular, almost European-style city. They'll wear hijabs, but they'll put their bangs down under the hijab. They're more civilized. When you think of Iran, don't think of Afghanistan. They have nothing in common. It's fundamentally different. But the one thing that will get them to back the regime, which they would otherwise hate, is to declare war on them or threaten them constantly, as Israel has done. Now, that's sort of been one of my assumptions, but maybe that assumption is wrong.
Are we going to find out there could be some truth, like what Netanyahu and the Israelis have been saying all along, that a lot of the civilians in Iran actually don't like their leadership and do want regime change and don't want to be under Muslim
theocratic leadership?
Theocratic leadership. Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't be all that surprised, honestly.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's almost like the claims in 2003 that the people are begging for democracy. It's almost truer when it comes to Iran. So Iraq was a much easier target, and it was easy to just sort of kick the door down and dismantle the regime effectively overnight. But it was impossible as we've learned, to engage in nation building there. Iran is a large population. What is it, 60 or 90 million? It's actually it's a kind of civilizational state, just simply a much larger country, again, as I said, European style cities. But maybe regime change sort of could work there, in the sense of, if you could do this targeted scalpel like killing of the regime, that it's much more likely for Iran to unfold into a modern, democratic state, because it's 4/5 of the way there right now. And I don't know. I'm so, again, these are just like live reactions, but I mean, this is sort of what I'm feeling, in the sense of, I mean, did the Ayatollah even really want to defend himself? I don't know.
A friend just shared an article from Fortune from August 2024. Alex Cart from Palantir said the U.S. will very likely fight a 3-front war against Russia, China, and Iran. But
interesting.
I don't see us getting into it unless Iran retaliates and is putting Israel at risk. Have we even heard any news about any of our strike forces and our fleets going over there to prepare for anything? I haven't seen that report.
Alex Karp is also, in terms of his public statements, he's actually pretty ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And he's just, to say he has war fever would be an underestimation. I mean, he is constantly talking about, you need this tool on the battlefield to destroy your enemies.
Basically,
yeah.
Right? That's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes, that's his bread and butter, is to get these contracts. And I don't know, the idea of our boys' boots on the ground against a unified China, Iran, and Russia, I'm not sure about that.
Well, if Israel does strategic attacks and takes out all the leadership in a few days,
there's not going to be no need for this.
There's going to be no need for a World War III.
Yeah.
If there's regime change, do you think Russia's going to start bombing us, even if we didn't have anything to do with it, and Israel did it, above the board, apparently by themselves, like they're claiming? Although it's weird. Our news is saying that we had nothing to do with it, but Israeli press was reporting that we were involved. I'm sure we had to know at a minimum, but it's not our ships shooting these missiles. Although
right.
We probably, we've been funding them and backing them, so you could argue that it's us that's doing it, but maybe Russia's not going to, are they going to be sending bombs tonight because Israel's bombing Iran? I doubt it. I hope not. But that would be, I think that's unlikely. Do they want bombs coming back at them to defend Iran? Does Putin want to risk losing power? And
Putin doesn't want to risk losing power. Putin wants every war that he engages in to be like Georgia in 2008, where people get mad and then they forget and forgive. And he claims that he's protecting Russian-speaking nationalists in these weird breakaway regions, and that he didn't actually conquer the country. He's just protecting rights and democracy. This is what he wants to do. It's this sort of slithery gray kind of thing that's brutal, but also you can't really pinpoint as a war. And Ukraine did not work in that way. He thought he wanted Zelensky to flee or face trial or something for Nazism, and for the country to fall, and then the West 9 months later, we'll kind of forget about this one and work with you. But it just simply didn't work like that in Ukraine, and Ukraine has been a total disaster for him.
I don't think Russian citizens are going to support an attack on Israel or America because Israel bombs Iran. No way they're going to support that.
No, they're a depoliticized population. Yeah, the idea that we're in a Middle Eastern war, or we're, yeah, if mano a mano with U.S., no.
They've had enough war. I saw it's 1 million Russians have died. That's what I saw. I don't know if it's true, but 1 million Russians have died in the Ukraine war.
1 million?
That's what I read. I think it was this morning I read that. But I said, take it with a grain of salt.
I mean,
Seems like
I
too
would
many.
not be totally surprised by that. Remember, 50,000 Russian, that's the death toll in the Afghanistan campaign that is now looked back upon as a total debacle and is directly leading to the fall of the Soviet Union. And they have many multiples of that already in Ukraine. So 1 million seems high, but I wouldn't even be surprised. I have no doubt that more than 1 million people have left Russia after 2022 and 2023. I mean, yeah, it was a total, it has been a total debacle. And yeah, don't listen to Scott Ritter.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Russia
Scott
is
Ritter said it,
winning.
and all the Russia shills said it'd be over in a few weeks. It's already over. They were saying it all along. And then look at how Ukraine just had a huge win hitting all those bombers last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Do you want to watch some biblical prophecy videos?
Oh, my favorite thing to do. I was playing some of them today. I mean, I don't know how many we have to watch. Endless rabbis saying a war, Gog of Magog, between the West, Europe and America versus Iran and Russia and China.
This came across my feed. It might be very basic,
Is this Peter Thiel?
but no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, let's check it. I haven't seen this one. We can watch this.
Yeah. Did you see that thing with Peter Thiel that was today that came out where a liberal journalist was confronting him and he was just like so angry, storming off? It was a very weird.
I saw the video going around. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. That's at Bilderberg, right? He's on the steering committee at Bilderberg, I think is where they found
That
him.
was literally at Bilderberg?
I think so. I'm
Wow,
pretty sure.
that's pretty.
Not 100%, but that was my impression.
Wow. What happened here?
There are 25 different titles for Antichrist in Revelation. 25?
25. He's called the man of sin, the lawless one. You can just go right through and all of these titles are meant to give us a little glimpse into his character, his personality. He is the most wicked, most awful person. I mean, take Hitler and Stalin and Mao Zedong and all those people, wrap them all up to one and then multiply them and you won't even come close to the awful character of this man. And he's going to gain control of this world.
How is this not
everyone
Trump?
will be under his domination, because if they aren't, they won't be able to function.
So, David, our audience curiosity, my curiosity is, where does this man come from? What can you tell us about him, based on biblical revelation?
Right.
Europe. They
I
say
believe
he's
he comes
European.
out of the European
He's
coalition.
about to say this,
Called it. I
Yes.
knew it. These Christian Zionists always do that. They'll describe the Antichrist and they're like 100% describing Trump, but then they all love
Yes.
Trump at the same time.
Yeah.
And they'll even
He's gonna
say
be
there's going to be a great deception and all the Christians are going to fall for the beast and follow the Antichrist. And then as they're doing, it's so wild that they can't put it together that you sound like you're describing Trump.
I know Donnie Darkin is extremely insightful on this. I think you discovered him first, like two and a half years ago or something. But yeah, I don't think that Donnie Darkin is right in the sense that we're living through Revelation, but Donnie Darkin's insight in the sense that this literature can help us understand history and mentalities, etc., I think is spot on. The man of sin, that's not how I would describe Mao or something. A man of sin. He was actually kind of puritanical. The man of sin is clearly Trump, who's bragging about he might want to date his daughter if she weren't blood related to him, and is screwing porn stars at golf tournaments. I mean, clearly this is a description of a figure like Trump who is going to gain control of the world, which is sort of happening right now.
The Bible says that early in his career, he takes power over 3 nations, and then with those 3 nations, he gets power over the European coalition, and then ultimately he comes to power over all the world. And when we talk about the false prophet in a few moments, you'll learn that his strategy for gaining control of the world is to provide a license for everybody to basically be alive. We call it the mark of the beast, but basically this license was set up to control the economy of the world, and the way you qualified to be able to eat and sell and buy and all of that was to worship the beast, who is the Antichrist, the beast from the sea. And so that's where we get the mark of the beast, and he gains control over all the world. Here's the key thing that he does. He makes a covenant with Israel at the beginning of his career, and he promises to protect them from all of their Arabic enemies, and so Israel goes back home, and they kind of disarm. They use all of their inventiveness and try to rebuild their economy. And the Bible says while they're at peace, he comes in and he breaks the covenant that he had made with them.
So the peace treaty is negated.
At the end of 3.5 years, he comes in and he violates their temple. He comes in and he destroys. See, when he makes the covenant, he says, you can continue your worship. At the end of the 3.5 years, he says, that's it, no more. I'm going to be worshiped now. You don't worship anymore. And in what the Bible calls the abomination of desolation, the Antichrist actually goes into the Jewish temple. I mean, this is hard to comprehend. He goes into the Holy of Holies. He removes all the furniture and he sets up a statue in the Holy of Holies, which is an idol unto himself. And he requires the whole earth to bow down and worship.
Exactly what
degree
Trump
of persecution does Antichrist empower?
You know, it's interesting. That's a very insightful question, because it's not just all overt persecution. Just stop and think about it for a moment. If you can't buy and you can't sell, pretty soon you don't have any food. And my belief is that many of the people during the tribulation are going to die from starvation, because there won't be any way. They will not be able to participate in the economy of the world, and they won't be able to eat. And so little by little they'll die.
So we embody the most cruel of leaders, empowered by Satan,
yeah,
who has now assumed control of the world.
Right. Just as God has a trinity, Satan has a trinity, an unholy trinity. Satan responds to God the Father, the Antichrist responds to God the Son, and the false prophet responds to God the Holy Spirit. So you got an unholy trinity empowered by Satan, and their purpose is to do evil at its greatest ever.
Unpack a little bit about this false prophet. Is it someone with a theological background? Someone who's seen as a religious type figure? I mean, there are all kinds of theories.
Right. But his whole purpose is not religious. The religious leader, the false prophet, really becomes the economic czar under the rulership of the Antichrist, and he's religious, and he's the religious leader and the economic leader, and he's the one who enforces the mark of the beast. He's the one who causes everybody to bow down to the Antichrist. He's the worship leader, really. He makes them worship the Antichrist, and if they don't get a mark. If they have a mark, they've already capitulated to worship the beast.
Something's got to happen here.
Right.
What happens?
Well, the first thing that happens is the Antichrist is now in control, and he can ultimately finally do what he wants to do. He's going to march against Israel and wipe them off of the earth. What the former president of Iran said he wanted to do, the Antichrist will now determine to do. He will march
Ahmadinejad, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He will march toward Israel. And then all of a sudden he'll begin to start hearing things that are happening. Other armies are coming toward him from the north, from the south, eastern armies coming across the Euphrates River, and he has to stop for a moment and try to deal with that. Well, he does, and to kind of fast forward as quickly as we can, all of a sudden all of these armies are together, and there is a new opponent that they weren't apparently aware of. The Lord Jesus Christ comes back, and these enemies that were fighting each other now have a common opponent. So they all come together to fight against Jesus Christ in what we call the Battle of Armageddon. I've seen where that's going to take place in Israel. It's the most marvelous battlefield you've ever seen.
Right.
But all of a sudden, all these armies are together, and Jesus Christ comes back. And so the Antichrist leads the armies of the world against Jesus Christ. And the Bible tells us that Christ comes back with his holy ones and with all the angels. And Christ, by the breath of his mouth, I tell our people when I preach this, he goes, yeah. And all the rebellious people of the earth are destroyed. And it's such a great destruction.
Totally
plausible. That the 19th chapter of Revelation says, God has to summon the birds of the air from all over the earth to come and clean up the carnage that's created.
Is that scene there at Armageddon, is that what we refer to as the apocalypse?
That shit is never going to happen. These people are delusional.
It's just this sort of like comic book fantasy as well. I mean, I even think of like Superman blowing, you know, they just get into this. They kind of get a hard on when Jesus Christ, he's no longer Jesus meek and mild or the proto hippie. He's just like laser eyed, you know, Zack Snyder Jesus. And he's like destroying people. But, this, if we take a theory that I've heard you say and that I've also delved into it, it's kind of like the Dan Brown theory, which is that these prophecies aren't real, but we're going to make them real. Yep. And those are what the villains and those the Da Vinci Code and angels and demons were basically doing. They were sort of forcing this a situation to take place and claiming that it was, you know, divine prophecy, that they want to draw Trump in to the Middle East. Like he is going to lead some army into the Middle East. And then from the Jewish perspective, the Messiah will actually come, or from the Christian perspective, Jesus will return. And those are kind of lined up in a curious way.
Yeah,
or not so curious in an obvious way.
I learned of a new term that I think the guy's name is Lang or Lane or something. He's some like technocrat guy affiliated with Curtis Yarvin, I believe. He has a term called hyperstition, where you can have myths and beliefs actually like make real world outcomes. So prophecy fits in that perfect, the phenomena of having prophecy and people trying to fulfill them, or at least not stopping them, that like these myths and beliefs can create like inevitable outcomes. So I don't believe in real Antichrist. I don't think prophecy is real at all, but if a bunch of people do believe it, like they can manifest them in the real world, that kind of idea. So if anything happens, that's how it's going to go down. Exactly.
Well, in Dune, it's the Missionaria Protectiva. So and I think Frank Herbert was extremely insightful on this. So the Bene Gesserit witches had placed long ago stone tablets that they aged and, you know, made just barely readable. They had placed those in the deserts of Dune, knowing that eventually the Fremen would find them and that they would develop a religious system based on these long lost holy texts in which the Bene Gesserits would play a role in their religion. So it's a sort of like
grooming a messianic figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're going to plant that seed and let it grow for a very long time. And it's interesting. In David Lynch's Dune, he doesn't go into that. And basically, Paul is the Messiah in a way. Like the Bene Gesserit or the Fremen are right. You know, he is there to bring rains to Arrakis and all this kind of stuff. But the book is much, much more cynical and sort of much more insightful in this way.
Yeah.
Someone is writing J.R. Tolkien is greater than Frank Herbert.
I have
in this house, we honor Frank Herbert. And not J.R. Tolkien, but
for my show, I have a bunch of soundboard clips, and one of them is from Dune, where it says, "These prophecies is how they control us." From Dune 2. I see a story here. IDF surrounds all West Bank cities as it preemptively strikes Iran. So are they making moves on the West Bank as well, or just making sure to keep them in check so that there's no attacks or something? And I also saw a couple days ago, Abbas is condemning October 7th, saying Hamas has to go, and probably trying to work for some type of two-state solution deal, or at least some type of peace, agreement with Trump. And if they do take out Iran, like, we're going to see more Abraham Accords, maybe something going on with the West Bank, Trump doing this covenant of the many peace deal that's, supposed to last 3.5 years before it falls apart. But If Iran's gone, where's the threat coming from?
Where is the axis of resistance? There's none there. Russia is not going to oppose this. And I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, but I am 100% confident that Russia will vaguely blame the U.S. for this, and they will not oppose this whatsoever. They will certainly not oppose it with military force. So they are, in effect, endorsing it. I mean, at this point, if you're not opposing it, you're endorsing it. And so, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And there's no real opposition to this. But I don't know. If you want to bring upon the Messiah, you need to draw Trump in, don't you?
I would think so.
Chris?
You know, I was kind of thinking, like, I mean, if Israel is able to do this to Iran, right, you can logically assume that the U.S., we can do this to North Korea. We can probably do this to most small to medium-sized nuclear powers, which then it almost kind of begs the question, we may need to kind of modify how we look at geopolitics if assuming we have these new capabilities, right? Like, I'm almost beginning to wonder, like, I think that it's possible Israel is preparing or kind of engaged in some type of dialectic where they're assuming that there's going to be some kind of enemy that isn't necessarily present now, if that makes sense. And
interesting.
I'm beginning to wonder too that it's possible when it comes to kind of the right's understanding of Israel, I'm beginning to wonder the usefulness of being anti-Israel, and beginning to think that a lot of this stuff needs to kind of stay in a lot of ways kind of esoteric in nature. Like the average person should not be aware of like all of this anti-Israel, anti-Jewish bullshit on Twitter, if that makes sense, right? Like, it's almost working to our disservice speaking about this stuff publicly, if that makes sense.
Do you want to address that, Adam?
Okay. This is just going off the top of my head, but if they do successfully do a regime change in Iran and they're not a threat anymore, then the idea of them dragging us into a war with Iran and then Russia, if Russia doesn't defend Iran and there's no threat of dragging us into World War III because of them taking out Iran, then like a lot of the problems with the Jews and them controlling our politicians, and if they're not risking getting us in World War III and collapsing America, then I think a whole lot of people are going to have less problems with Jews. Because the Christian stuff that you see mostly on Twitter, you're right, like, oh, the Jews killed Jesus, or they drink baby blood, or they're worshiping the devil. Like, I don't even agree with any of that bullshit to begin with. So, and it's like, are they even going to need to control our politicians so much if the Iranian threat is gone?
If they have this level of capabilities, then yeah, there's no need to continually presenting themselves as a plucky little state that desperately needs America's support.
Netanyahu said that too recently. He said, like, we don't need America's support anymore as much. He said that. I don't know how true that is, but maybe they won't be so dependent on us anymore.
And the anti-Semites look kind of stupid right now, right? I mean, if it looks kind of dumb, really, right? Israel, if they don't need us, and that almost is beginning to seem like that's what reality is. And now there's a lot of people that basically went and put their lives out on the limb, spreading these ideas that are just kind of wrong, outdated, and stupid. It almost kind of gives way to like almost justifying Jewish leadership or control of things, if that makes sense. What I'm saying, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the other huge objective is like them censoring our free speech. But if like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We'll see how this plays out.
We'll see how it plays out. I mean, maybe we are making massive assumptions and there's going to be a huge reversal in some way, or some massive terror attack that destabilizes Israel. So, I mean, all of that's is certainly possible, but just some thoughts on it. I think you tweeted this out, Adam, and I thought it was a brilliant statement, which was that over the past, let's say, 3 years, we have had the great noticing that has occurred. And what has that led to? that has led to the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, anti-Semitic president of all time. So just to flesh that out a little bit, some people like Stu Peters or whatever, they existed 25 years ago, but they were extremely marginal to the point that even your average online user would never encounter them. And they would certainly, David Duke was there and so on. There wasn't this industry from Stu Peters to like Lilly to a vague anti-Semitism you see from like the alt-right or Elijah Schaffer or something like that. That just didn't exist. So this has been a massive change. And where are we? We are all I voted for Kamala goddamn Harris, for God's sake. But like, where is 99% of the right? They are backing Trump, who is behind just overt Zionist action in the Middle East. So the Great Noticing has, at least at this point in time, if its goal was to prevent Jewish domination or, whatever, it has failed spectacularly. I mean, it has failed. It's been
empowered the Jews more than anything.
Arguably more successful than Israeli outreach to holy rollers in the 90s. If you just judge it by, don't judge cause and effect exactly. Be a bird and fly up in the sky and get a view of what is happening. Israel is stronger than they were in the 90s when they were directly influencing religious right figures to, sing the praises of Israel and talk about Revelation and blah, blah, blah. They are more powerful now. So again, cause and effect. Are they funding the Stu Peters types? Do they like the Stu Peters types? So, okay, it's murky. But just judging it from the effect, it has worked. The Great Noticing has led to Jewish empowerment. And the Great Noticers have more or less, let's say 80% of them, endorsed the expulsion of sincere pro-Palestinian protesters. They have basically endorsed throwing a bunch of, Christian, in some ways, brownish Columbia graduates into CCOT. They've all endorsed it because it's part of the immigration thing. So what Israel has going right now works. And the MAGA coalition, if this plays out like we are thinking it's going to play out right now, they can continue to pat themselves on the back and claim that Trump has stayed out of all wars and never started a war and didn't like this and had nothing to do with it. And it's actually the liberals that are the pro-Jewish people, et cetera. So, I mean, looking at it right now, I think this whole thing sort of works. Now, to go to another aspect of your question, I do basically agree that there's nothing more ridiculous than dumb anti-Semitism. And if anything, when I listen to Stu Peters or whatever, I almost have greater sympathy for Jews or Israel itself, because they are so fucking obnoxious. It is just unbearable. And at the very least, you can't say this about Stu Peters and his dumbass audience, but you can say this about most Jews being educated and reasonable, and you can have a conversation with them, more sustaining of civilizational norms than these fire-breathing anti-Semitic retards. So yeah, Lucas Gage, who would you rather have dinner with? A Zionist New York Review of books reading a dweller of Brooklyn, or Lucas Gage? Who would you rather, who could you have a reasonable dialogue with? The question just answers itself. And so I think there is at least some sort of there's some kind of claim that we shouldn't allow this cat out of the bag and allow retards to engage in anti-Semitism because it just makes the whole thing worse. And it ruins the game because it's something that they can latch onto, and you can always find a Jew somewhere. You know, I mean, I think that Jews were absolutely disproportionately involved in, say, pornography, but you can in literally everything that you don't like, you can find some Jew because Jews are smart and well-connected and nepotistic. So of course there's like a Jew involved with this LBGT group. Of course there's a Jew involved in Hollywood. Of course there's a Jew involved in pornography. Of course there's an Epstein, or I go on and on. And you know, you have to be precise and serious when you criticize Jewish power. You have to really understand it. And these guys basically make everyone look bad and in fact make the Jews sympathetic with their bombast. I think that's what the caller was getting at. And I think it's complicated, but I largely agree with that sentiment.
I agree. Low IQ anti-Semitism, Christian and religious anti-Semitism is like the biggest driver for Jewish power and for Jewish sympathies as well. And like the most dangerous thing is a bunch of the Christian Zionists that worship a foreign people and a foreign land, and you know, are coming after free speech and stuff because of that. Like that's almost the most infuriating part. Like the traitors and the Shabbos Goys and stuff like that. Without them, what power, you know, the Jews wouldn't have the power and the influence that they have.
And it's like when people talk about this publicly, all they're basically doing is like signing up for like a Palantir monitoring list. Like you're just like, you're like almost like leading the sheep to slaughter. Like you don't realize the kind of like massive threat you're up against. Like you're not gonna like Twitter your way into like taking down the Israeli state or something like.
Yeah. Like Stu Peters is like, oh, we're about to have a 110 and the final solution. It's like, no, you saying that all the time is actually more likely just like to get us all round up and put in gulags. Like that's where we're closer to being. Like that's a delusional pipe dream, and saying it is just giving them more power and justification to pass hate speech laws.
Now, on the other hand, because we have to be fair about this, there is also no doubt that the brand of Judaism and the brand of Israel have suffered catastrophic and possibly indelible losses of capital, let's say, or brand equity, or you know, whatever you want to talk about. What are the best brands in the world? You know, Apple, Gucci, Rolex, or whatever. They seem untouchable. They're aspirational. You just have to say those words and people get excited. And it's a status symbol. I could go on and on. Israel and Judaism have suffered pretty catastrophic and irreversible losses of brand equity over the past 20 years. So you like, and this is where it is complicated. And so I think you need to look at both sides of this question, because the existence of Jake Shields or Myron Gaines or Stu Peters, yeah, they sort of make anti-Semitism look bad or look ridiculous or whatever. But just the fact that exists is also a problem, because you never, I would imagine with a lot of people who are at CPAC, I'm just using this as an example, or TPUSA, I imagine that a lot of them, a good portion of them, are anti-Semitic on their own time. I bet a lot of TPUSA people watch Nick Fuentes, for instance, unironically watch him. And you could never have said that in 2003. You know, if you attended CPAC or some conservative gathering, which I did, you are surrounded by Bush worshiping pro-war Zionist maniacs. And now you're not. among liberals, the fall from grace of the brands of Judaism and Israel are even more dramatic. So living in the 90s, you're a liberal, you're probably pro-Israel. Not that anti-Israel voices didn't exist. If you talk to any educated person and they're not, well, even if they are Jewish, but especially if they are not Jewish, and especially if they are brown, they are going to be anti-Zionist. And that type of new class didn't exist previously. So it's complicated. There are countervailing forces at play right now. And sometimes when you feel like you've gained total dominance of a situation, that's almost like the moment of the downfall. So it's definitely complicated, but yeah, I appreciate that sentiment that you put forward.
You know, I expected when Israel launched attacks on Iran, I thought they were going to be firing everything they had back at Israel. And the fact that we haven't seen anything yet, and I don't expect anything more to come. It's like now it kind of,
they didn't even have a fucking bomb.
Yeah. They've been scared. It seems like they've been scared all along too. That's why nothing has happened so far. There's a whole lot of big talk by their Muslim leadership, basically.
Why didn't they have a fucking nuclear weapon? It's not that fucking hard. Like, literally the Soviet Union, when did they get a nuke? In 1950?
60s.
1948 or something? Yeah. How is it that you can't? Are they this fucking incompetent and idiotic that they don't have a nuclear weapon that you can at least threaten someone with, if not fire?
I mean, they can't hit them with any missiles, let alone a warhead, though. Even if they had one, are they going to get past the Iron Dome? Doesn't seem like they did last time with anything.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but that's...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That's been their whole thing, is they wanted to maintain a policy of nuclear ambiguity, of going like, oh, well, you know, we don't have a nuke. The Ayatollah, he has a fatwa out against nuclear weapons. They're haram, so we can't build them, which is fucking retarded. But, you know, but we have the capacity to build them in like weeks. So, you know, just beware, instead of just doing the smart thing like North Korea did and building a fucking nuke so you can't get attacked.
Exactly. And also, what are we, 10 years away from the Libya lesson, which is that never trust the U.S. and keep your fucking nukes? So I think it was after 9/11 or even after the Iraq War, Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons and was like, oh, hey, we're going to get along, right? Yeah. And then, you know, when was it? 2011, I think, rolls around.
They shoved a knife up his ass.
Yeah. So don't give up your fucking nukes, idiot. But like, I could have even told you that without Gaddafi. It's just obvious.
I mean, if these
Do they
guys
actually
really
believe in their religion?
I was just going to say that.
Oh, it's so...
If they're dumb enough to believe the Quran is real, maybe they're not smart enough to have advanced weapons.
God,
I mean,
damn it.
There's also been like this internal divide with Iran since Pezeshkian became president, because he's like a liberal reformer and inherently kind of an appeaser of the U.S. He's always been like, no, we can negotiate with them. We can make peace. And the entire time, the Ayatollahs and the hardliners in the IRGC were telling him, no, this is a waste of time. Stop. And ultimately, they have been proven right.
And then, like, I mean, if you know where the head of the nuclear, if you know where the nuclear scientists are, you also know where the fucking nuclear warheads are also at. They probably wouldn't even got out of the air. I don't think people are realizing, like, the level of surveillance we're dealing with now. Yeah. I do not believe those nuclear weapons. Well, they probably think working.
I think the point... I think the better point is it's easier to sabotage if you're this like very intelligent, or I should say advanced intelligent state like Israel is. I think it's easier to sabotage a nuclear program than it is to, strike them or to destroy their facilities and stuff like that. And I think that's actually what's going on. I mean, I think that you guys kind of nailed it when you said, why don't they have an advanced nuclear program by now? It's been decades. Because it might be difficult work, but at the end of the day, a lot of this is common knowledge at this point. I think that you just need the materials and the money, which obviously Iran has, and they've had plenty of time. So I think that Israel might actually be sabotaging it, making it impossible for them to actually make any real progress. And that could be the real thing. And I think that nuclear weapons is probably being used as, a veil over. It's really being used as a fake threat. I think that especially, and in fact, I think that a lot of the ramping up that Israel has been doing with this aggression, it's almost haphazard in a way.
Thank you, Indomitably Base. You're the man.
Nonsensical.
Appreciate you, bro.
You're muted, Adam. I don't know if you're trying to say something, but
I think he said I'll be right back.
No, I was talking I got a super chat. I was thanking my guys.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah.
He said we're his favorite Aryans, so.
I think that nuclear weapons is being used by Israel. I don't think that's a real threat. I think that they've escalated things so rapidly because of drone technology and AI and missiles. I think that Iran is actually doing a very good job of developing that stuff quickly. And I think that Israel sees that as the real threat. And if we look at what Israel did in Gaza, I think it's easy to say that Israel is not good on the ground game. They're not very good at a kinetic battle. They have a good intelligence apparatus. Obviously, they can do these very seemingly, scary and intimidating things where they can wipe out all the generals. That's the report, by the way, is that they killed Iran's generals and some of their top nuclear scientists.
Not the supreme leader, though. I just saw he's still alive and being briefed.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point that I was going to make, Adam, is that if you think about what that does, if you're trying to cripple or to bring someone back to the Stone Age or just make it difficult for them to develop a nuclear weapon, you wouldn't attack their generals. And in fact, you wouldn't even attack, nuclear scientists, because when you kill generals, who replaces them? You're just going to get more zealous, younger people who are going to immediately replace them. And they're going to have a stronger ambition and motive to fight back. And these nuclear scientists, okay, you killed a head nuclear scientist. What was he, a project manager? He's obviously not doing these projects are going to have many people involved in them. So it doesn't seem like it's actually going to do anything. And it almost like that's their intention, is they're trying to just rile them up. They're looking for a response. If you're trying to destabilize Iran, why wouldn't you take this intelligence to actually take out decision makers and make it such that they would have a hard time communicating with each other in a time of turmoil? Obviously that's not what they decided to do. So it's kind of this, I think they've distracted us. Israel is very good at this. Obviously they're tremendous at, making distractions and doing things seemingly in one direction, meanwhile having different intents. And I just think that's what it is. We can't, basically what I'm trying to say is that you almost can't, it's almost better in Israel's case, not in general, but in Israel's case, Occam's razor never applies. You should never assume that the simple, logical, straightforward thing is what they're doing, because that's never the case. And it's demonstrably true that that's never the case. So if we think about it that way, striking nuclear facilities isn't their goal. It seems like their goal is really just to bring America into a war to neutralize Iran, because they fear Iran as a legitimate kinetic war adversary that could actually damage them and hurt them very badly. And I think that's what it actually comes down to.
So what you're saying is they have the capabilities for regime change, or at the very least regime death. They could just take out the Ayatollah right now. They clearly have that capability, but they're not doing it because they either want chaos in the region or they want to spark a response from Iran, which they might not get. That's what you're saying. That's the strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean,
or maybe he was just in a bunker and they didn't know where he was. He's got better protection and they couldn't move, the other things too. Because I would imagine they would also want to go for him first.
If they wanted a full regime change. But that's hard. I mean, nation building in the Middle East, at the very least, has just totally failed. And you rarely find any think tanker or politician who supports it. It's a punchline of no more regime change wars, as Tulsi Gabbard, or like nation building. That's Fukuyama-ism from the 90s. We can't possibly do that anymore. So maybe they don't want to do that. They just want to dominate the region and create a little bit of chaos, maybe have some sort of response just to keep interest up. And they've achieved that. But if you take out the regime right now, you're going to have to engage in like decades long nation building process and installing a new democracy and blah, blah, blah. And there's going to be a resistance or whatever. It's better just to radically humiliate your opposition.
And then they'll want to do a regime change on their own, maybe. If the leader's alive and he completely failed defending and he has no chance, then,
So generals don't do diplomacy, right? So the point is that, and I don't think that by taking out their leader, you're going to create a regime change. I actually think that the leader would just simply be replaced by the right-hand man, and then things would just go on as normal. The only difference is that new leader who actually engages in diplomacy is going to be shaking in his boots. He's going to be terrified. And he's going to comply to what you say. He's going to negotiate. And and also he's probably not going to have the same leadership capabilities. I mean, because he's probably more of a supportive figure than a leader. I mean, there's a lot of benefit to taking out a leader. I don't think it would totally just destabilize things and make it in a way where you would have to engage in a massive campaign for regime change. But I can say that I think it's pretty obvious that if you take out generals, you're not taking out a military, but that's what I think the average person would believe. If you kill a general, you're like taking the head off the snake kind of thing. And I think the average person sees it that way. They see war as like, you killed the general. Now the people under him are confused. They don't know what to do.
That's not totally wrong though, Ateas.
No, I wouldn't.
I have a statement. You guys want to hear the statement, breaking statement from the Ayatollah Khomeini? He says, at dawn today, the Zionist regime committed a heinous crime on our soil, exposing its wicked nature by striking residential areas. It must now await a severe punishment. By God's will, the powerful hand of Iran's armed forces will not let this go unanswered. A number of our commanders and scientists were martyred in the attack. Their successors will immediately continue their mission. We were just saying that. With this crime, the Zionist regime has sealed a bitter and painful fate for itself, and it will surely face it. I don't believe them anymore at this point at all.
And I think
in response, is that not exactly what Israel was looking for right there? They literally said, we are going to replace the people you killed, and we are going to be more zealous than we were before. Like anyone.
Why does Israel want that though?
Well, they want the threat, and they want to have America feel like they need to support them and engage in war, potentially even going to war with Iran and taking them out completely. I mean,
but why do they want us to go to war and take them out? You're saying they're holding back from they could do it themselves. It seems like Israel could do it themselves at this point.
I don't think they can. That's not what I said. I don't think that they can. I think that they have the capability. Clearly, they have the capability to take out the leader, and in that case, they would have the leader replaced, and diplomacy could actually be engaged in. Obviously, the leader is someone who is too zealous to talk to. If you were truly trying to engage with someone, and you had these kind of capabilities that they have, then you would just kill him. And then you would talk to the next guy and say, hey, look, we'll kill you. And we'll talk to the third guy if you don't cooperate.
But it's
and
kind of
obviously that's going to work more than just killing some generals, because they're just going to make them more zealous. You're going to make them more fervent. Now,
completely demoralized and saying, okay, we're done. We don't want to be bombed anymore. You win.
They're not.
But the demoralization, the demoralization gives way to spiritually breaking the people, which gives way to a much more stable form of regime change, right? Like with Syria, right? In a lot of ways, Israel, I think we're seeing like a new type of regime change, right? Where you just break the Iranians. The Iranians can't keep tweeting until eventually everyone that supported you will turn on you. No one will, at the core, people don't want to be on the losing team decades on end until they're eventually.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to lose confidence in their leadership.
If I were living in Tehran, I would just be like, "Fuck you! I don't want to hear this nonsense from you anymore. Let me take my chances with the Zionist Middle East."
Yeah,
basically.
some secular installed leader that, I mean, they got to be losing confidence in their leadership, seeing they talk a big game and just get blown the fuck out every time.
And these people were born and raised into that society. I mean, they have a completely different outlook on life.
But they're human beings.
They kind of operate.
Humans are religious. Humans. Well,
I'm born and raised in America. I don't love our Zionist politicians. I wouldn't man a regime change of our Zionist politicians.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean,
not that I'd want a foreign country to do it, though.
Iran is more blocked off than you are. You've been exposed to many different ideas since you were a child, and I don't think that they have the same access to the internet, to books, to media, to learning languages.
But we're not talking about wild new ideas. We're talking about something that's very human, which is demoralization and a loss of faith. This is something that has happened throughout history.
The Jewish God is prevailing over Allah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get them realize that just lost, get them realize when they've been killed, or did they just
You're breaking up there.
Yeah, I got to run in a minute too, guys. I can do like 5 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah. I'll get back to you, Mateus.
I mean, they're talking about we're gonna return fire. Dude, they just took out the supreme commander of the IRGC. That's like if they killed everyone in fucking CENTCOM for our military. Like, it's over for you.
Yes. Well, Mateus, we're having trouble with your connection there.
And I don't know I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, Iranians know what it was like before the revolution. They had a secular society. There wasn't, Muslim extremists in power. Like, a lot of their population has to want to go back to that, I would imagine.
Yeah. Your parents can remember that time if you're my age.
I know Iranians that came to America and fled it, and they don't like the leadership there. So there's some truth to that.
Definitely. A play called Italy?
Yeah, I was going to ask. I haven't heard anybody bring it up yet, but do you guys think that there is maybe the plan is to not have like a kind of top-down overall regime change, but to maybe attempt to balkanize Iran? Do you think that the balkanization of Iran would be a realistic project, or do you think that those kind of ethnic tribal forces are maybe not quite as pronounced as maybe some people think from the outside looking in?
You reminded me of Trump saying that that Persia is a great nation and a great history, and they want them to be a part of the world community. They just got to get rid of the Muslim extremists in power that are like a threat to Israel, and then they'll be accepted in the world community. So I don't know about balkanizing. I think they just want a regime change and maybe secularization a little bit, probably.
Yeah. They want to make it like the Gulf Arab states. They're going to be like Zionist friendly, shifty billionaires ruling over a weirdly secular society with Islamic elements.
And
that's what they.
It's like Islam.
Yeah, that's better than division. I mean, I remember in Iraq, it was like 2006 or something. There was talk about going to Sunni Shia or tribal elements and carving up the country. That was abandoned. Thanks for being on here, Adam.
Yeah.
This is almost like a live. This was not almost like this was kind of a live reaction show.
Yeah.
I'm going to post this as soon as I can.
Yeah. And we had it planned and scheduled before the strikes launched. This wasn't like a impromptu thing that we fired up.
No, but we'll definitely need to revisit this because our reactions might be correct or might be curdled milk.
Yeah. It could all change by the morning. If they're striking in Tel Aviv in the morning and we're getting dragged in, then it's, everything we said here is like basically not valid anymore.
Exactly. But I think we're onto it. But yeah, definitely thanks for being here and thanks for broadcasting it. I hope it got people interested in our work. So yeah, everyone, no more news, and we'll definitely have you back on soon, Adam.
All right, cool. Take care.
All
Thanks,
right,
guys. See ya. Okay.
All right. Chris, do you want to jump in?
I mean, it's like in some ways, Islam is kind of.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching. 2 streams today. 2 hours. We streamed for about 5 hours today. Glad the internet worked. Crazy stuff going down. I'll be right on my phone first thing in the morning, seeing what happens. If there was any retaliation strikes, if any more, we'll see. We'll keep up to date. Thank you, Indomitably Base, for the big dono. You're the man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Who else sent a dono in? John Stone Club, Zornder Edom, Amalekites Unite. That was earlier today. Anyway, everybody, stay tuned. Things are getting very interesting. We will see. We will see how the world shakes up after this one. We've all been anticipating the Iran war for quite a while, so let's see how it unfolds. I will see you guys again tomorrow morning, probably, hopefully, 2 p.m. Eastern. Everybody have a nice night, and I will see you tomorrow. Let's do an outro so we don't cut anything off. Gotta go get the girls ready for bed and brushed. Uh-oh, and the audio is not playing. It does that sometimes. Maybe I need to refresh, update my OBS. Let's try this one. All right, the sound's not working, so I'm just going to shut it down.